I'll just put film beside all of them now.
Welcome everyone to a special episode of the Average Ontario Anglers Fishing Podcast. Today we have, I know we say this every time, Andrew, but we have an awesome episode today. And this one's even more awesome, but I have to tell you up front, it's a bit of a sham because this is the Average Ontario Anglers Fishing Podcast. And we have on as a guest someone who is slightly more, actually way more than an average angler. We have a special guest today, someone we've wanted to have on the podcast since the beginning. We have Jay Siemens. How's it going, man?
I'm good. I thought you guys were going to call me out on my Manitoba shirt on the Ontario podcast. That's what I thought you were leading up with there.
I wanted to, but I'm not going to touch that.
Thank you, guys. No, I've been following your stuff for feels like a couple of years now, and it's just cool what you guys are doing, and it's overdue. That's what it is. I know we've connected a couple times now over the last year and a half, 2 years, so this is great.
We are super excited. I know Andrew is too. We kind of had to fight over who got to host this, but because Andrew got to host the Fishing Canada show on last time, I get to host the one with Jay Siemens. I've just reached a goal in my life. Just kidding. So anyway, this podcast is actually brought to you by CanCast, which is Canada's biggest fishing show. Now, the CanCast fishing show is on what day, Andrew?
March 30th.
I'm glad he gets that right every time because I don't even know. So anyway, this episode is sponsored by CanCast, Canada's biggest fishing show. We actually have a little giveaway coming from CanCast as well. And we would also like to thank our giveaway partner for this episode, which is actually Daiwa Canada. So we're going to get into that super awesome giveaway that Andrew doesn't even know about. And I'll surprise you guys with that later. So before we get started with this episode, I thought we could look at the traditional thing that we do every episode, which is the interesting fishing fact. And to handle that, we have the man with the beard and the mustache, Andrew.
Well, I wanted to do something that was not only kind of special, but also on brand for a classic Andrew interesting fishing fact. So I know Jesse's going to roll his eyes, and I'm hoping just Jay enjoys the ride. But it's all about, survival. And I know Jay lives pretty far up north. You can get into pretty hairy situations out and about in the wilderness. But you do things smart, you can survive. But what if you had superpowers? Like survival superpowers. How cool would that be, right? So I compiled a list of some kind of like really interesting survival techniques that these animals have, or abilities that these different animals have. And then whenever you hear one, you're like, I want that, just jump in. I want to know kind of who you sound like. Oh, what's your spirit animal? When you're telling everyone in high school or preschool, it's like, what's your spirit animal? What do you identify as? Like, okay, well, which superpower would you want to have when we go over these? All right. Okay. The first one is the Hydra. And you might think, like, is that like mythology or something like that? Actually, no. It's kind of like a jellyfish, related to jellyfish, but it lives in fresh water in Canada. It's a tiny tentacled freshwater predator. The cool thing with this is a lot of creatures, they can regenerate limbs, so they can regrow them if they get cut off. These guys have the ability for cellular reassembly, which means if you cut it into pieces or even break it down into individual cells, it can rebuild itself from scratch into the same being. So it's like reattaching stuff back onto itself.
That's crazy.
It's called reaggregation, and it's almost unheard of in the animal kingdom. There are very few creatures who can do this. And scientists during testing, they blended hydras into cell soup. So essentially separated like all their cells and then watched them reassemble themselves back into full organisms.
So it's like the Wolverine of jellyfish.
It'd be nice if I got a hook on my hand, pulled it out, and it instantly was like healed. But no, I can't even have that. Another cool thing with them is they're essentially immortal because they don't show any signs of aging, and under the right conditions, they just keep living. So they constantly are regenerating their cells, which again is why they're able to do these things. But yeah, that's one of the closest things to an immortal organism we have here on Earth.
How big are they?
They're small. They're very small.
Tiny.
They're not like large by any means, but yeah, like it's crazy to be able to disassemble and then reassemble. The second one is the burbot. So this has a cool power. Burbots, I've never caught one. I really want to. But what's something that you hear guys say when they catch a burbot? What's a defining feature of them?
I was going to say something to do with their spine. The fact they can curl up in a ball. Yeah, that'd be my guess. Something along that. That's
pretty cool. It's actually has to do with their slime. So the fact these guys here, again, they're almost like eel-like, right? Reminds me of the hagfish from the ocean, stuff like that. But the cool thing that burbot can do, and I never knew, they can create a mucus sleeping bag. They'll just like coat their whole body in this mucus. And what it does is, because they're cold water fish are on the bottom, in low oxygen conditions, they secrete a thick layer of protective mucus around themselves in warm, low oxygen conditions. It prevents parasites and bacteria from infecting them while they go into a state of low energy dormancy. So they'll stay in this state, in essentially this like slimy sleeping bag until the conditions improve, which for burbot is they want ice. They want cold water. They thrive in that.
Yeah.
They are way more active in cold water than hot water. I mean, that's kind of cool. Just nap wherever, and just like, no one's going to bother you if you're sitting on a subway and be like, I feel like a nap, and just call yourself in slime. Like,
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's man, it's crazy how much stuff we have in Ontario and Canada that, yeah, I learn stuff all the time when I research stuff for the podcast.
That's cool.
A third one, I really like this one, I'll be honest, straight up. This is the dragonfly nymph. Now, the juvenile dragonflies, they are in ponds, slow-moving water. They have jet propulsion. They also breathe through their butts.
Handy.
Yeah. We kind of have jet propulsion, it's just ineffective. These guys, they can actually like force water out their bodies at a special like anal valve that they have, and that's how they can shoot forward and like lunge at prey, because they're like voracious predators in this larval stage. They also have gills inside their rectum. Their gills are not external, so they have to breathe through their butt. That's the only way for them. Another thing is, I know Jesse's seen like the Alien series and stuff like that with those like extendable jaws, right?
Yeah.
Dragonflies have those. Their mandibles in the bottom, they'll cock back and like spring load and all of a sudden shoot forward and grab prey. These are terrifying things. And I just want to say, I am going to be doing a dragonfly fishing fact in the future, closer to the summer months, because this is scratching the surface of dragonfly like lore. Like, that's so cool. The next one I want to say, the last one, is the tardigrade. So these guys, they are extremely small. But the really cool with these guys, it's often found in mossy freshwater environments. They're pretty much indestructible. So tardigrades, they can lose almost all of their water and enter a death-like state called cryptobiosis. In this form, they can survive freezing, extreme heat, radiation, and even the vacuum of space. Now, that's cool and all, except all they need to come back is just add water. So as soon as you put water back on these things, after decades in dormancy, they come back to life. So they'll just stop living for decades, and then as soon as you put a bit of water on it, they come back to life. Now, these guys are microscopic. They're super, super small, but they are one of the most resilient life forms on Earth, and they are literally almost everywhere. We just don't see them, unfortunately.
Or fortunately.
Yeah. But I thought those are some pretty cool superpowers that are surrounding us all the time when we're out there in the outdoors. They're pretty much in every body of water that we fish on, that we love to fish on here in Ontario, in Canada, across Americas. And you take it for granted, but pretty much the Avengers out there, but even better and made up of animals.
I have to say, though, like, if I had to pick one of those, 100%, I would pick that jellyfish that can heal itself.
Oh, yeah.
Not only for being like, you could be like a spy or something and be like unstoppable, but not that. Fishing related, imagine being a muskie angler. You wouldn't need pliers or gloves or nothing like that.
It doesn't matter if you get hooked. Yeah.
You choke that tube, just reach down, pull it out, your hand shred it up, and it just heals instantly. Like, perfect.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Imagine how fast you could fillet a fish if you didn't have to worry about cutting yourself. You're just like,
hey, you would just eat the fish raw with the bones in it, because the bones wouldn't be able to penetrate your jaw.
There you go.
I was going to say that healing would be perfect. I was just watching Jay's last video, and he had this big pike. Remember? Well, obviously you were there. You remember. But Andrew, he's reaching down to grab the pike, and he's like, uh-oh, like, better not, get any teeth in the hand. You wouldn't have to worry about that. You just reach down like it's nothing, man. That's cool. Well, leave it to Andrew for having a very weird, interesting fishing fact. And every single episode, the interesting fishing fact is cool, because we always try to learn something new about fish or techniques or stories that happened right here in Ontario and Canada. So I thought I'd just say quick, if you are one of those weird people that do not know who Jay Siemens is, I'm gonna fill you in very quickly. Jay Siemens is, if they had, remember the People's magazine, how they're like, Brad Pitt, he's the hottest bachelor of 2005. If it was like the coolest YouTuber or content creator in Canada, it would be Jay Siemens on the cover of that. But anyway, Jay Siemens has actually over 250,000 subscribers on YouTube. He creates amazing videos that are relatable, but also like cinematically amazing. Some of your movies that you put together, like the long ones, like the one that we just mentioned a few podcasts ago, the one where you went to Alaska, they're literally National Geographic quality. Like it blows my mind. Like I said this before, but I was watching it on my TV, the Alaska one. And my wife's like, is this National Geographic? Because like we have Disney Plus and we always watch like, like Gordon Ramsay, like when he goes to the different places. And I was like, no, this is Jay Siemens. She's like, whoa. So super good stuff. But why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit for the people that maybe aren't as familiar as all of us average anglers out there?
Well, thank you. That was quite the intro, and I definitely don't view myself in that light as all. I'm just I'm just a guy that is happy to be able to make fishing videos and people watch them. And it's crazy because it feels like I just started doing this yesterday, but it's been, 2011 was kind of when I started filming with Aaron Weeb with Uncut Angling, and that's kind of where I was like a part-time fishing guide, starting to dabble with photography. And 2011 is where it kind of took the next step with the start of Uncut Angling there. And I think 2017, right around 2017 is when I kind of started, uploading to my own channel, not knowing what it was going to be. If you guys look back in the archives there, you can see some old wedding videos and like vlog travel trips that weren't even fishing at all and that sort of stuff. I was just like dabbling with everything. I knew that fishing was at my core what I love to do, but I didn't know. I was experimenting and just wanted to document things. So since 2017, it's kind of been, those first couple of years was me still like, shooting weddings on the weekends and getting any sort of gig I could to fill the gaps. Right. But then it kind of just got to the point, for the last, I guess, 6 years that it's been just full blast, full blown YouTube is many videos I can make in a year. That's been my focus. So I'm totally blessed to do what I do. And it's definitely a different landscape. You talk to someone like, Angelo, like you're saying you had on the podcast recently, and it was a different time when you had to do the TV game years ago. We're very blessed now that we can have podcasts and YouTube channels and all sorts of stuff, and it's free to upload and you can film it on your phone, and so it makes the barrier to entry a lot lower. But it also adds, there's a lot of people doing it too, so it's a double-edged sword, right? But I'm just happy to be in the midst of it. So,
and I have to say again, we've been following you for a long time, and if you've never watched any of Jay's videos, we're going to talk a little bit later about some of my recommended videos that I recommend that you watch that Jay has done. We do that every episode, but today they're all going to be Jay Siemens videos. But anyway, super high quality videos. The thing is with Jay's just like a super chill guy. Like he's just like a normal average guy.
No, that's what you think. You should have seen me on the ice this afternoon. I was not in a good mood.
Okay, not chill.
Man, I was trying to set up my shack in gale force winds. And then I finally get the shack set up, and then my heater won't start. And then I'm just like glad I was in the shack by myself because there was some yelling happening. But
it didn't blow up in your face like last time, did it?
No, it didn't blow up in my face. It just didn't start. So that was almost worse than it blowing up in my face. But no, I do think I can be chill, but if I get excited, that normally doesn't make the final cut. But anyone that is like, very close to me, you see them like, I'm an emotional roller coaster. You probably see a bit of that in the videos, but my highs are high and my lows are low. And it makes for an interesting life.
And you're very relatable, which is the main thing I was trying to get at. You're a normal guy who just loves fishing. You happen to create amazing content on top of that, but you're just a chill guy.
Well,
remember, we were at Sail this year. Remember you had that meet and greet at Sail?
Yeah.
And we were there and I was like, I want to see, I don't think I had ever met you up to that point. And I was like, I wouldn't mind shaking his hand, right? So we were waiting in line and there's this huge lineup. And I remember coming up to you and talking to you and I was like, is this weird for you? And you're like, yeah. Just all these people.
It's not something you like prepare for, right? Because especially where I live, every time I come down to your neck of the woods to Toronto, I'm like, there are so many people here. And then I'm like living outside of Kenora, like kind of keeping to myself and just making videos, right? Like I make a video and I put it online and then I go off and make the next video. And sometimes I'm fishing by myself in the middle of nowhere. So it's like, it's weird to be on that other side of it. But obviously like it's life-giving for me as well. It's crazy because I was on the other side of that. Like I can clearly remember going to, Winnipeg Boat Show and being on the other side of those conversations. So I know I know what it feels like to be on the other side too. And I'm always just like trying to give that same energy that I would want to get as a, 8-year-old kid asking Gord Pies or Dave Mercer a question or something. Like I can clearly remember those moments, but also it's not something that you ever like prepare for. And that's not the reason I make videos, is to have lineups of people at a meet and greet, right? It's a byproduct of it. And if I can inspire people through the videos and get people excited, it's awesome. But it's still like, it's it's just an interesting deal that comes along with making videos, right? So
I was listening to Jim Sarek, the muskie hunter guy. He just did a podcast with Glenn McDonald on 54 Bus, and they were kind of talking about that, about how like fishing shows, like it was such an expense. Like you'd have to rent airtime, and it was just such an expense to have a fishing show. And now with YouTube, like you said, anyone can do it. But I'm glad that the people like Jay that are, pushing forward and promoting good, ethical Canadian fishing content is someone that's so humble and chill, we should say.
There's a lot of people that dream of having a fishing show or doing what I'm doing. So it's like, I pinch myself all the time. So I will never, ever take that for granted, because I know that like, it could be gone tomorrow. And I don't know. I love it all. There's days like today where I, get a little frustrated, but at the end of the day, it's like, I got to go fishing. So life is good.
So anyway, I just realized like we've got so far into this podcast, we haven't even told you what the subject is. Like the subject isn't Jay Siemens. Like that would be a pretty interesting episode, but I thought we could kind of talk about something that is very special to me and Andrew, and I know also to Jay as well. So today we're actually going to be talking about fishing from small crafts, which is something that, again, me and Andrew are, experts at because we're poor. So I know we saw you at the boat show the other day in Toronto, and we were looking at a lot of the Lumacraft boats. We were looking at all different.
I almost sold you on one. It was close.
Yeah.
It was close.
What was that? The V16 with the 20 horse on the back.
Yeah, that would have been perfect.
I was looking at aluminum little tinners, and I'm like, man, these are in my price range.
Yeah.
Looks like it's
Super
back to
nice
the canoe
too.
for another year.
Well, it's in the works, but it was nice seeing at the boat show literally hundreds of boats that we couldn't afford. But when it came down to it, fishing out of a small craft, whether you buy something new, used, your canoe, a kayak, a small tin boat, we know that generally that's where most people start, or what most people can strive to actually afford nowadays in any situation. So I thought we could talk a little bit about that. Again, we fish out of a flatback canoe most of the time, or Andrew's 14-foot tinner with a 20 horse on the back. So that's our jam anyway. We love that. And we've been fishing out of canoes and kayaks for forever. Me and Andrew, when we were little babies, we were out there in a red Coleman canoe. So
nice.
What would you say would be maybe your first good story or experience fishing out of a small craft?
I picked up a little 12-foot aluminum. I'm trying to think where I even found it, on Kijiji or something like that. And it was a little bit leaky, but the freedom that boat gave me was it was phenomenal. I'd done so much shore fishing. I'd fished in other people's boats, but I just remember getting that first boat. It just unlocked so much, right? You can get, what people don't realize is you can get more places with a small vessel than you can with a big vessel. I love my 20-foot Alumacraft. That thing is like my dream boat, but I do a lot of fishing on my Old Town kayaks too. And especially where I'm at, there's so many lakes that don't have boat ramps, or the boat ramps really suck. And it's like, you can get into all these places with a canoe, with the 12-foot aluminum. So I'm thinking like my first couple trips was just, it was in Manitoba with my dad, just trying to catch new species of master anglers. And it might've been Western Manitoba, some of the stock trout lakes. The thing too is there's lakes that are electric only. So I can remember a couple of those lakes where I couldn't have a gas motor anyway. So like, I never had a gas motor for that thing. I just had a 55-pound thrust trolling motor and a big lead acid in the back. And, maybe we'd have a second one in there because we wouldn't know how long it was going to run. But yeah, it was being able to fit it in the back of the truck. I remember it was like my boat, and I borrowed my parents' truck, and it would fit perfectly hanging off the back of the bed. And I just, I remember a lot of adventures with me and a buddy, just anywhere we could dump it in. And we never got into trouble with it, because it was just like, you know your limitations. Like, we're not going to go out on the Great Lakes in it. We're going to stay on smaller lakes, or if we go on bigger lakes, we're going to wait for better weather. But it was just that freedom right off the start,
Definitely. Remember, Andrew, the first year we got your boat? Like, we've been fishing out of canoes and kayaks since the beginning, since we were young kids. But long story short, we found this old piece of junk 14-foot tinner in this old lady's backyard, and we ended up bartering for it. So we didn't even pay for it, like traded a bunch of stuff, and we pulled it out of her yard, and it had some big gashes on it. Remember that?
Yeah, like 8-inch 8-inch gashes. You could just see light right through it. Like,
Yeah.
Oh man.
So we prop that up in my workshop at work. My boss is like, there's this wall that only goes up 8 feet, and he'd see like 8 feet of the boat just sticking up. And he's like, what the heck is that? I'm like, I'm just going to leave this here for a few months. And then we slowly worked on it. We tore everything out of that thing. We grinded everything and cleaned it out. There was literally like a family of raccoons living in it earlier, I'm pretty sure. All the foam was just like in pieces.
Yeah, all the wood is obviously like rotted. It had been sitting for over a decade in a backyard.
Oh yeah,
man.
On top of that, sitting elsewhere before then, like it just wasn't used.
But remember that first day getting out in the boat, just flying around.
It was wicked because the motor on, like, it was, especially with no bare bones, we didn't have the deck on or nothing either that I put on later. So it's just seats, transom.
Speed, yeah.
Oh, the thing just is flying. And it's a John boat. It's a flat bottom too, right?
With a 20 horse.
Yeah.
Two
stroke. So it just pops out of the hole and you're just flying across. And calm water, that thing is a blast. Any chop, though, it's a little, uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think we hit about 40 kilometers an hour in that boat.
Yeah.
And it's painful. Like it's.
Oh, yeah. It slapped.
But being in that and like fishing, we're standing up, we're fishing, we're sitting in the seats, casting around. We can lean over and lip the bass without risk of, or we got to make sure we're not going to tip the canoe. It's a lot more enjoyable to fish out of a craft like that than a canoe when you can,
Yeah, it was definitely a game changer. I know from looking and watching your channel for a long time, you fish out of a lot of different stuff. You probably fish in almost everything, really. The main things that kind of bumped out at me was like little tin boats, but as well as sit on top kayaks. Like I know you're fishing out of the Old Town kayaks, which I'm hoping to get next year. I didn't tell anyone.
Nice.
He's going to buy me one, but the pedal drive. But depending on the situation, what would be your choice of craft for fishing different bodies of water for someone that has small crafts?
Yeah, like I think kayaks can be good for shallow water, but really like I said, back to, your boat ramps and that sort of stuff, you can tackle huge water in your kayak, but I think where it excels is getting to that small water where other people can't get to, right? So getting into those back bays and sort of areas that you just can't get with a big boat. Another thing too is like lakes that have, motor restrictions as well. That's another beauty of the whole kayak thing. But I think a whole rabbit hole we can go down is it's a lot easier to put a kayak on the roof of a vehicle than it is to put a tin boat on the roof of a vehicle too. So that's another part of the conversation too, with how you're able to get your boat or kayak around. I think, as far as choosing between vessels, boat's nice because you can have a little more gear. You can fit maybe multiple people in it. But kayak too, you kind of have that freedom of doing your own thing, right? So if I'm fishing a lake and I want to split up with my buddies and we want to cover water, that's been fun where we'll have multiple kayaks and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to go this way, you're going to go that way. Or if we're filming something and cameraman Brandon's in another kayak, like that works really good too, rather than, potentially being in the same one. There are 2-person kayaks out there. For me, when I'm thinking about what lake I'm going to in my kayak, it's like, what lake are people not getting big boats into? Because some of these trails I go down, I would not want to pull any sort of trailer. So it's like either you get a boat that fits in the back of your truck or on top, or it's kayaks that fit in the bed of your truck. So there's a handful of lakes that I'm like, yeah, I'm never launching a boat there. And they're awesome fishing because they're just not getting much pressure. I mean, there's the whole I've never been there, but the whole Boundary Waters in southern Ontario there. I think it's like near Fort Francis, east of there, on the border. It's called the Boundary Waters, but it's like canoe only water. And that's like amazing fishing down there. I get told all the time I need to go down there and film some videos, but it's like basically motorless area, and it definitely keeps the area pristine and the fishing pressure off.
There's one lake that me and Andrew like to fish, and it's canoes only or kayaks, like no electric motors, no gas motors, nothing like that. And the fishing there has been consistently good. Like not amazing, but consistently good. Every time you go, you're going to catch 25, 30 bass easily in that lake because no one fishes it. Like, and people that generally are going there to paddle around, they're like, well, why would I waste my time paddling around here when they could drive up the road to another lake that has a launch, right? So you have to think like lakes like that, it's a little more annoying. You gotta paddle, or you gotta pedal your kayak, but the fishing can be absolutely insane.
As soon as there's a boat ramp, it just opens the doors up for so much. I can think of a lot of examples where there's, public boat ramps versus not public boat ramps, and the lake might be right beside each other, and the one without the public boat ramp is just consistently better.
There's one spot that I fished last year with Ben from Paddleheads, and he's like, we're going to go, it's a musky river. We're going to, drag our boat down rapids and get to these big holes that no one can get their boats into. And the spot was amazing and there was no one there. I was like,
Yeah,
I definitely have to go back. But like, if you didn't have a canoe or a kayak, you'd never get down there. You'd never be able to fish it. There's no shore access. There's no boat launch that gets there. So that's definitely an advantage that, maybe you think you're at a disadvantage for just having, a canoe or a kayak. That's absolutely false. You're not at a disadvantage. Maybe a disadvantage of fishing bigger water, but, reevaluate and be like, hey, I can fish all these other spots that no one else can fish. Like, Andrew, what about that one lake we fished with all the stumps in it?
Well, absolutely. Like we the amount of times you've seen the bottom half of a motor line in the water is not funny. Like the guys that try to go in there with boat motors, they'll learn quick not to do it again.
Yeah.
But the fishing in those areas, like you can push past the skinny water, the stump fields, and you get a couple deep holes and stuff like that. And the fishing is amazing, but these bigger boats, they don't go through it because it's a minefield trying to get to that second lake, up that little section of water or whatnot, that flooded plain.
And we've had some absolutely fantastic days there, and you look around, there's no one on the lake. It's like, Are we the only ones here? Okay. I'm not going to complain.
and it's quiet too. I love the hum of my Merc, but when I'm got the pedal drive going, it is so quiet and peaceful, and you're close to the water, kind of like a float tube. I mean, I when I think about early fishing memories too, I think about my float tube, like fly fishing, float tube waders with some fins on. Like, talk about small watercraft and a cold day. But hey, I can think of some amazing memories in a float tube. So I don't know. My memories are not tied to how comfortable or uncomfortable I was. I would say in general, you're going to be a little more uncomfortable in your small crafts. Like, maybe it's because I'm getting older now too, but I filmed a video that's going to come out in a couple months, and it was filmed out of my childhood tinner. And wow, did my body hurt after that. It was just like I had a couple chunks of foam I was sitting on, and I was kind of hunched over, and I was like, man, when I was 18, we were leaving the house at 3:30 in the morning. I was sleeping in the truck, fishing a little boat, and I was just fresh to go every day. And now it was like, we camped that night and just bodies aching. And I'm just like, this is maybe not ideal in this moment, but you forget those things too. I remember the fish we caught. I'm over the pain of that. So
me and Andrew are pretty much at that age too now. So we understand. Yeah. We fish a lot, like I mentioned, in canoes. Andrew had like a nice portage canoe, very light, a little bit tippy, but we used to get into all these little lakes. And then what happened is I got a Sports Pal flat back motor on the back and a trolling motor. And that was like a game changer. We're like, wow, we don't have to paddle anymore. Like, this is amazing. We're just shooting around the lake. And then eventually the bigger boat that could go 4 times as fast as the flat back. But all the boats, we've caught tons of fish and had great adventures in them. And we still have all of them. Like, sometimes we'll use Andrew's canoe. I actually just bought another canoe last year. So all these tools, you don't think you're at a disadvantage when you have a smaller craft, because not everyone can afford a big boat. If you can, that's great. But if you can just afford to, look on Kijiji and find a $500 canoe in good shape, or even less than that. Like I picked up a really nice 17-foot Coleman, one of those big indestructible plastic canoes. The thing I used it for is towing people behind my Sports Pal. I'd take people camping that didn't have a canoe. I'd be like, all right, get in the canoe, load all their gear. And then I would just hook up some hooks and rope to the back of my canoe and just drive them to the backcountry site. And it was fantastic. I'm like, literally a few $100 for a boat like that. But anyway.
Yeah, I think you need to view it as like a tool, not as, obviously you guys have multiple vessels, and not everybody has access to multiple vessels. But, just because you have a boat and a canoe or a boat and a kayak doesn't mean that they're not both just as, valuable in a fishing sense. Maybe monetarily obviously they're different. But for me, it's just like, I'm going to do what I need to do to catch the fish. And if that means I need to get in a canoe or a kayak, Taro and I did a video as, we called it the Battle of Ontario. And he was up in your neck of the woods and I was down here. And I was just like, we're trying to catch as many species as we could in a day. And the first half of the day I had lined up for lakes that I wanted to fish from the kayak that was up a sketchy road. And, and then the afternoon I was in the boat. So it was just like, that's what I needed to do that I thought could catch as many species as possible. So it really is like just a tool, and you can do a lot with either, but it is if you need to just get whatever you can is pretty much it. Like whatever you can tow or pull or throw on top of your car, like you said. As soon as you start dealing with trailers, there's some issues there too, but
And using what you have to the best of its ability, right? Like you were saying,
Yeah.
you can fish water that other boats can't get into with a smaller craft. Target those lakes, like make that your focus, because you'll be able to fish those more effectively with those small water crafts than a larger lake. You're going to have more success. You're going to have more enjoyment. So no matter what you have, fish the water that you're most equipped for.
And speaking of equipment, I thought we could just briefly talk about, because every time we talk about fishing in small crafts, we have to talk about safety equipment. So when it comes to someone just getting into, say they just picked up a canoe or a kayak on Kijiji Use, or they just bought their first small boat, what is some safety equipment, Jay, that you would recommend that everyone has to have in their boat to keep them safe?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always wearing a life jacket. I think that's something that you can't really hammer on enough, because it blows my mind how often people aren't wearing life jackets. And there's actually I saw a survey going out about the thought of potentially making life jackets mandatory in Canada, which would be pretty interesting. I would be on board for that personally. The fact that seatbelts are mandatory, I don't know why life jackets aren't mandatory. It seems like it should be even more important than a seatbelt personally. But like, I'm always wearing a life jacket. Get yourself a good inflatable life jacket. It's an investment. But I see people always spending $300 on, on a rod and reel, and then they balk at a $300 life jacket that's going to last them a very long time and potentially save their life. So you hope you never need it, but to wear it is just a life jacket. Just sitting in the bottom of a canoe or kayak isn't going to help you that much if it floats away from you. Beyond that, depending if it's something motorized, having your tether, having your kill cord is important, right? Because those little small boats can get away from you in a hurry. But yeah, like for me, it's pretty much life jacket, my boating safety kit. If you're worried about your gear, you could tether it. If you're on a kayak or something, I know some people like to tether their gear, so if they flip it, at least going to stay in the area. I actually made a video earlier this summer of a buddy who flipped his kayak, and I went for a scuba diving recovery mission to get his stuff back. And it's amazing how far that gear will spread and disperse itself. Like, we didn't find it all. And it was like, he knew exactly where he dropped. He had a waypoint there where he flipped it. And the gear was spread out probably 60, 80 yards from the point of where he flipped, maybe further. But we were scuba diving for an hour and we still didn't find all of it. So, beyond a safety, just for saving your gear, it can be important to tie your stuff up and, be a little bit organized.
I was just gonna say, I definitely recommend tying your stuff down. We've been fishing in the canoe a few times when some wahoo in a speedboat whips by and just leaves a huge wake, and you're just scrambling to turn the boat in time, and you almost take on a huge wave and almost flip over.
Yeah.
So it can happen fast, and the last thing you want to do is just see all your expensive gear and electronics just sink to the bottom where you can't get them. Not all of us have scuba gear like Jay. Like, come on.
Yeah. Another thing on that topic of safety gear, and this is one that's really easy to overlook in a small boat or small vessel, is having your nav lights at nighttime, right? There is, talking about me being, a chill person, I have a tough time not yelling at somebody when I boat past them in the dark and they don't have lights on. Like, I don't care what boat you have, like, turn your lights on, make sure they're on. And if you don't have a light on your boat, if it's a small kayak or a canoe or whatever, like, take a headlamp, and when you see a boat coming close, flash them or wear it on the back of your head so it's strobing or something like that. But that's a pretty important one. Like, for me, like I said, I'm a little more in the middle of nowhere, but around you guys, there could be boats cruising back from cabin to cabin, or who knows what's going on late at night. And if you're fishing into the dark, what I worry about being a small vessel is just people aren't used to seeing people fishing in small vessels on the average. People are expecting to turn the corner and see a big boat. And I picked, for one of my main fishing kayaks, is the brightest color that Old Town makes, their orange color there, because I'm like, that's just one more thing that someone's going to see when they turn the corner. A lot of guys do their flags on the back of their kayaks too, just so they stick out. But like, as a person in a small craft, like, you have to have your heads up all the time. Like, you've probably seen these videos, these reels of these big boats coming around the corner, coming straight at the small fishing boat, and they just don't see them and they have to dive out. I have a buddy that was in an exact situation like that, where there's a guy fishing and looking at his graphs, and they had to dive out of the way into the water. And it's like something that you should think about if you're in a small vessel as well. You're not going to be as visible.
Absolutely. I actually, on my Sports Pal, last year I finally put on full out big LED strip nav lights on the front, the green and red ones, and then
Nice.
I have one on a pole as well. So even something like that in a canoe, you may think, oh, well, I don't need to have those on the canoe. I can just have this, flashlight. But any little thing like that'll make you more visible at night, especially if you're fishing at night, even towards sunset or early in the morning. when it's low visibility, or even if it's like foggy or something, any little thing like that is not a lot of money to get. Like I think I got those LEDs for like $20, installed them. It
Yeah.
took half an hour to do, right? Actually, it's a cool, we'll have to go into this another time, but the way that I rig those up in my canoe, because you may think, well, how you rig up all this wiring in your canoe and stuff. I actually have them hooked up to a Milwaukee M18 adapter that I got on Amazon.
Nice.
And it's all the wiring is there. So when I have to turn my lights on, I just go to the front of the canoe, slide like a 2 amp hour battery in there. They're LEDs. They take like no power, and that'll light it up for days if I leave it on. But it's just having that extra light definitely is a huge deal, because a lot of people just, they literally don't pay attention. And then if they do see you at the last minute, it's too late. They're already coming right at you, or there's a massive wake. And then next thing you know, you're in the water and you're dumb and you're sitting on your life jacket. You weren't wearing it. And it's just a nightmare. So anyway, we're not going to talk about terrible things like that anymore.
Well, there's one other thing I'm curious what your input is on it. I was talking to a friend that does a lot of sea-doo fishing down in Florida, and she was saying that it's like a controversial topic about life jackets, because if there's a boat coming at you in one of those situations and you're wearing an auto-inflating life jacket or a life jacket that is like a foam life jacket, you're not able to jump down and swim underneath. So, the thought is if there's a boat coming at you, you jump in the water, you swim down. But if you have an auto-inflating life jacket or a foam life jacket, you're not doing that. So her argument was, some people would say, don't wear a life jacket, then you at least have a chance of swimming underneath and getting away from that boat collision. But it's like, well,
you dive down and hit your head on a rock and then you die. Like, I don't know.
My opinion, and that's all it is, an opinion, but I would say there's more risk of getting injured by getting hit by that boat, regardless whether they're under the water or not. You get head hit off the bottom of the hull or something, and if you're unconscious and no life jacket, you're toast. Like, that's
zero
it.
chance.
There's nothing. So at least with the life jacket, at least there's a potential recovery, because you're floating there.
That's my thought as well. But it was an interesting take.
I just it's kind of like not wearing a seatbelt. It's kind of the question of, not that it's a question, but driving your car on the ice when it's thick enough. It's like, make sure your seatbelts are off so you can bail out, right? On the ice, it's better to have your seatbelt off. But I think in the boat, it's better to have your life jacket on.
Yeah.
Or just, try to avoid big boats coming at you. I mean, if you see a big boat barreling towards you, don't try to just stand and, I was here first. No, I'm going to move out of the way. If I see a big cruiser coming down the Trent Canal and I'm in my little sports bell, believe me, I'm moving out of the way. I'm not being anywhere near there. So anyway, here's a good question. Modifications or setups that you recommend for small craft to make fishing easier?
I think, dialing in your electronic setup and dialing in your storage, right? You're minimized on space. So I would say as far as the gear stuff goes, like for me, I'm a big live scope guy. I love having that technology wherever I'm at. So it's a good docking station. I use the HE Innovations shuttle, and that's what I bring on fly-in trips. I bring in my 12-foot aluminum. I bring in the kayak, like whatever. It comes in my big boat. Most of my stuff is hardwired on my big boat, but it is just nice having that shuttle to move around and, having that docking system, right? So you guys have multiple vessels to have something where it locks in. That I find that a pretty helpful, customization. I'm always working on camera mounts too. I don't know if you guys have seen in some of my videos where I have my full camera setup on the nose. I have a tripod on the nose of my kayak. So I actually drill. It looks like it's just resting there, but it's actually, my tripod has little holes in the feet. So I drill 3 holes into the kayak, which kind of hurts me, but then it actually mounts down. So it's like the tripod is one with my kayak. So if I tip it, that's an $8,000 tip. Actually, when you add live scope, I'm just thinking camera gear. It's very expensive if I roll my kayak. I don't even want to think about that.
Hey, it's Old Town though. They don't flip over unless you're stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I've done some tip tests on the PDLs, and I don't know if it made it online somewhere, but it is surprisingly tough. Most of the time you will fall out before you tip a lot of those kayaks, just with how they're built. But for me, I love having the tripod on the front, and having, because any of that small vessel stuff, you're always just seeing GoPro footage, which is fine. But you're talking about the cinematography side of things. It's like I always want to try to get the best footage possible. So for me, that's putting the expensive camera on the nose of the kayak and just being like, oh, I hope I don't tip it. Yeah. It would be pretty funny footage, but it would be an expensive clip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like every time I fly the drone when we're fishing, I'm like, here, it's going to go in the lake this time.
Yeah.
So far, so good. Only
Yeah.
into a tree once. Yeah, definitely for us. I was going to say the Scotty mounts or whatever mounts you use, but me and Andrew are fully into Scotty, again, made in Canada, but our boats are totally rigged out with all Scotty stuff. Like
Nice.
whenever
And then
Scotty
it's all
comes out with a mount,
interchangeable.
yeah, we just put this here. We have the foam mount now. We have GoPro mounts. Like everything is interchangeable between all of our boats. And even on my sports pal, I have extra tubing, like EMT tubing that I added on so I can even clamp more mounts on it. So when I get into my sports pal, it's like, there's my Garmin fish finder, clicks in here. This clicks in
Nice.
there. The batteries all connect. And if I go with Andrew, it clicks into his boat. It's perfect for what we do.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was going to say one of the best modifications, and again, that's because we already talked about how the smaller crafts can be uncomfortable, especially when we're getting a bit older. You can get some for pretty cheap. You get those like strap-on seats for in a canoe, puts a bit of a back, a bit of support, and like that helped a lot when I was still doing like portaging trips and whatnot. Even in the tinner, we joke around about sitting on top of the life jacket, right? Which is what I grew up doing, is what you did. But now I have an inflatable one, so I have to be wearing it for it to be effective. And putting in a cushioned seat in the boat, like it's just it feels like a luxury because I'm used to sitting in canoes, but I tell you, it for your enjoyment on the day and how you feel at the end of the day, like you're not dead sore, so stuff like that. That's one of the first modifications that I would do to any, like my next boat. If I get another tinner, a used one or new, I'm putting in a nice seat mount with some cushioned seat. Like that's 100% what's going in there.
Even canoes, just getting that folded padded seat that you get, everyone gets a Canadian Tire for $30.
Yep.
I got 2 of those for my canoe. And it's like, if you're sitting in a canoe and you're over the age of 28, you're gonna, thank the Lord you have that.
Yeah.
We always think like you said, when you're 18, you're 19, you always get these young people on Instagram. And they're like, oh, you guys, I'm waking up at 3 a.m. and blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's cool. But, talk to me in 10 years, pal. And then we'll see how it's going.
I wish I had that energy still. Yeah.
Yeah. But with age comes wisdom sometimes. So anyway, before we get any farther, I thought we could talk about our giveaway this week. This is a surprise giveaway from Daiwa Canada. See, Jesse may not be Jay Siemens, but I do have some connects. Ooh.
Look at this. That's a couple years old, eh? I was gifted this Daiwa from my buddy Mike Klatt, and I'm still trying to figure out how old it is. But this is not the giveaway reel, but
what is that? A cool Daiwa 402 spinning reel that looks like it's from 1950. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So that, I mean, if someone wants it, maybe they could trade whatever reel they win with this one. I'll maybe make a trade with them. But
I thought we could talk a little bit about the giveaway and then maybe talk a little bit briefly about some of our favorite Daiwa reels that we already have. And the thing I hate about these giveaways, guys, is like oftentimes we give away a lot of stuff that we personally don't get. So it's like, oh, this is cool. And then it's like, oh, let's give it away to someone. It's fine. I don't need it. Do we need new reels, Andrew? No, we have so much. Like we got so many.
This is how people get in trouble. This is how you guys get in trouble because you end up just keeping it for yourself and no one ever got the prize. Like
actually,
there's
I'm
too
in
many
dire
stories
need
like
of,
that.
of some reels, Jesse. So
I wouldn't say dire need, Andrew, but yeah.
Well, I only have 5. I need at least 3 more baitcasters.
Okay, sad life. Anyway, so the Daiwa Canada has donated to us to give away to one lucky Patreon member the brand new Daiwa Tatula SV100, which is the brand new redesigned one.
Nice.
If you've been following us on Instagram or this podcast for any amount of time, whenever we recommend a reel, if you're just getting into your first, I'd say nice reel. Again, we have reels starting at $100 going up to way too much. But the SVs we're huge fans of. These are almost impossible to backlash. They're not impossible to backlash. Don't take that the wrong way. They're almost impossible to backlash. They have the SV spool. I don't know what kind of voodoo they used on this, but they cast so smooth. They're so nice, and they're very hard to backlash. Like even if you're casting like straight fluorocarbon, which is oftentimes a little bit, backlashy, they're great. We love them. This particular one I'm holding here, it's not the new one. This is the SV103, which is one of my favorite reels ever. But they just redesigned the regular Tatula 100 SV. It looks really nice. It's like $300. Like it's a nice reel. Like I'm jealous. Like what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
That's anyway. A sweet giveaway.
Yeah. Do you want it? No, you can't have it. Jay is not allowed to enter his own giveaway.
What?
Neither is Andrew. But anyway, we'd like to thank Daiwa Canada for donating that reel. Again, whatever person is drawn in the winner there, you will get to pick right or left-handed and the gear ratio. So we're not just going to give you like the opposite hand and like a low gear ratio, something that you're going to hate. You're going to get exactly what you want. So again, we'd like to thank Daiwa Canada. Andrew, what's your favorite Daiwa reel?
The Tula. I love the Tulas.
I'll tell you though, that Fuego,
The Fuego
bait
is
casting
good.
reel.
Yeah.
Andrew, I had this Fuego that I bought of someone else, and it's like their entry level, like $150 reel. It's not expensive. And then I sold it to Andrew, and then Andrew caught a giant muskie on it when we were bass fishing, and the reel was fine. I was like, wow, holy smokes.
It's definitely needed some tuning now, but again, that was my only bait caster for 3 years, and I used it like all the time, right? So I put it through its paces, and I already got it used, so that lasted me really well, more than the average person would use it in a year.
Absolutely. We like to try new stuff from different brands or whatever. But we have been really turned on to Daiwa the last few years. I've just been really happy with it. And the stuff, it's sleek. It casts super well. If you're just getting into bait casting reels, it may seem kind of intimidating. But if you get a Daiwa with the SV spool, it's like the cheat code. That's all you need. So anyway, we'd like to thank Daiwa Canada for that. To enter, Patreon members are automatically entered into this giveaway as well. If you are a free Patreon member, make sure you check out the giveaway posts, because you are entered, but you have to do something annoying because you're not a Patreon supporting member. You have to, I'm going to ask something. I'm going to be like, go into the podcast and tell me what Jay said at 30 minutes and 10 seconds. Like, I'm going to make it slightly difficult for you because you're not a supporting member. We do appreciate all of our Patreon members, all the people, free members, all that. But we have to do that legally, right, Andrew?
Mm-hmm. You got to make sure it's available to everyone.
Yep.
It is available to everyone.
It will be annoying.
We really appreciate the paying Patreon members.
So again, our Patreon members, they donate a few bucks every month to help us cover the show costs, and that's about it. So we do appreciate all that. So before we get into the next part of this small craft angling section, and then we're going to get to a Q&A, which is all of our Patreon members have put for some questions, which is another reason you should be a Patreon member, even a free one, so you can ask some questions to our guests. I know we just did one last episode, but we generally do it every other episode, but I thought we'd have it this episode as well. We're going to do Jesse's YouTube recommendations. And again, I am waiting for you guys to come up with a name for that. So it's not just called Jesse's YouTube recommendations. It sounds pretty lame. Like usually we have little like segment names, and no one has, stepped up to the plate and gave me something interesting. Andrew's one last time was not good. We're not going to use that. So I'm going to tell you some Jay Siemens videos that I absolutely loved.
We should have Jay rank them how he thinks on a tier system as to how well he thinks he did on those videos.
Okay, so again, we already talked about the Alaska one. We talked about that a few episodes ago, and we were gushing about that one. But me and Andrew are big northern pike fishing fans. I know Jay loves fishing for pike as well. One of my favorite ones that you ever did was Pike Paradise. That's it?
Yeah. Am I supposed to rank it? I'm waiting till the end to rank it.
Oh, okay.
No, I can rank it. I didn't know if I'm moving things around. Pike Paradise.
Yeah, before you rank it, why don't you just tell us a little bit about that episode? Just very briefly summarize it.
Yeah, basically there's a caribou hunting lodge up north that did a little bit of fishing. They wanted to get more into the fishing side of things. So that was, kind of our trip was to showcase what there is for fishing on this lake. It's so tough. A lot of my trips, close to home, I can kind of move the dates around and be flexible based on fishing. When you book a fly-in, you're kind of at the mercy of the schedule. And they wanted it for early June in the north, which is like, there could still be ice on the lake, right? This trip, the stars aligned, the ice came off. We were the second group in, but the first group that went in, they only caught a couple fish. Water was cold. And then the day they were leaving, the sun came out, and it was just, you couldn't ask for anything better. Like Pike Paradise was exactly it. You'd roll into a bay, we'd put the drone up, and it would just be like floating logs everywhere. And it was just a matter of like, okay, well, do we want to get slow-mo footage of that one, or do we want to get drone footage of that one, or how do we want to catch that one? And it's just like
absolutely insane footage. Insane.
Thank you. You can do that stuff when you have lots of fish. Like if you're trying to just do it with one fish, it's a little tougher. When you have like 70 chances to get that topwater strike or the fish eating the fly, like that's what I live for, is the combination of the cinematography and the fishing, and that allowed for it because weather was perfect, fish were stupid. I guess something that maybe this is giving away a little too much, but like a couple of those fish, they were different clips, but the same fish. For example, like I threw my fly out beside the boat. This YouTube recommendation talk is going to go too long if I talk this long about every video. But I threw my fly over the side of the boat. This pike eats it and he just spits it out. And then he eats it again and he spits it out. And this same pike ate the fly, I think 5 times in 2 minutes. So it's just like, it's just hilarious because the fish were so dumb. They were just like, you always hear the jokes about putting a cigarette butt in the water. It could have been whatever you wanted. You could have caught a fish with up there. Like it was. So anyways, that's Pike Paradise. If you like pike fishing, you like slow motion fish eating lures, you might like that video.
What kind of boat were you in though? We can maybe tie it back to the main topic, and it's okay it went long.
Yeah, that was in like, I think I'm not even sure what it was, a Lunder and a Lumarine or something, but all those camp boats are the same. They're all 16 to 18 foot, like shells, very lightweight with a 30 or 40 on the back. And
my dream
they
boat.
handle so much abuse. Yeah. That's a very standard camp boat in the north, is an Lumarine with a 30 or a 40.
Yeah, Andrew's dream boat.
Yep.
So anyway,
There you go.
Pike Paradise, absolutely fantastic. Just here's a hint.
Thank
If you're
you.
looking through Jay Siemens' YouTube videos, if you see a title and then beside it, it says in bold letters, film, those are the ones you want to watch first.
I'll just put film beside all of them now.
Yeah. It's like filleting a pike, the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Slow motion of the Y bones.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So, speaking of that, I didn't add this to the list, but you also have a very good episode on filleting pike. But
Thank you.
I digress. The next episode that I would recommend is Search for a Giant, which honestly is one of my favorite because I've been getting more into muskie fishing recently in it. That was the one with Greg Attard, who is a hammer. He's a guide up on Lac Seul, Andrew's Dream Lake. And they go up there, Jay goes up there and catches an absolute giant fish. How was that for a video?
It's fun to fish hard with 3 people in the boat. That trip was Troy Mansfield, the owner of Winoga, and that was my first time meeting Greg. And Greg's just such a fishy dude. And it's like, I don't know, that when I think about that trip, I just think about getting exposure to so many cool muskie spots, right? It's one thing to go learn it yourself, but I'm getting taken on like the tour of all tours with those 2 guys in the boat, right? They've got some serious experience on Lac Seul. And just, obviously catching the fish is what you want for a video, but just knowing all the spots and the history of everywhere we went, like it was a cool trip. And just I know how tough muskie fishing is because I've blanked on a lot of shoots. So for what happened in those couple of days, that was a fun one.
Absolutely giant fish too in that film. Like just Jesse grabs his muskie, snaps it over his knee. I'm like, dang it. Anyway, so that also is a Jay Siemens film. So just so you know,
That is a film.
We're gonna like rent out like the Cineplex one day and just play all these and just pay you sell tickets.
Dusk Till Dawn movie night with Jay Siemens.
Yeah. All right, the last one is not a film one. I just thought it was interesting because it was locally done to us here in the GTA. It's the one where you went fishing with Taro for a huge bowfin.
Yeah.
And it's called We Caught a World Record Fish. And that is very local to us. The spot that you fish, I can actually see from my balcony. So,
wow. Yeah, it's no secret. It's no secret we were fishing. We always joke about, people matching up the backgrounds. That's the thing about YouTube is people match up pictures. They can really match up video clips. So when you see the CN Tower in the background, it's like, well, I think I know where they were. But
Seattle Space Needle, that's where.
Yeah. That's just the opposite end of the spectrum of what I normally do, right? Like I was like, Tara, let's do something urban, something you're used to, right? Because I'm used to being in the middle of nowhere. So I had only caught, 1 or 2 bowfin in my life before. And that was just a lot of fun. Anytime you're on the boat with Taro, everybody should experience at least, a day in the boat with Taro, maybe more.
If you haven't heard his laugh, like, you're good. He seems like a super, super cool guy. Like we've met him a few times.
Yeah.
But I'd like to fish with him one day in the future. But yeah, very cool fish. Bowfin are one. I've caught a few bowfin myself in a similar area that you were fishing.
Yeah.
And they are a fantastic fish. I didn't catch any close to the size that the ones that you caught. They were giant because Taro knows where those big boys are.
Yeah.
But yeah, very cool video. So anyway, that ends the YouTube one, but you have to rank them.
Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3.
I think it's got to be Pike Paradise. Oh, that's so tough. The Taro one's fun because it's just like Taro brings so much personality, right? It's like I don't think I have a big personality, and then I get with Taro, and it's just like he's electric. So I'd probably say Pike Paradise, just the cinematography standpoint, and probably bowfin and then muskies, which is crazy because it's like picking a favorite child. So it's tough because I just know how much work went into all of those, but by far the most work went into Pike Paradise. Yeah, there's a clip where we knock our camera into the water. Like that was what I was talking about, like $7,000 camera in the water. And it went underwater for like 3 seconds. And cameraman Hayden pulled it out, and we're still using that camera to this day. So I don't know.
Ooh.
It might crash on a shoot yet, but
The fish gods were smiling on you.
yeah.
I'm going to put links below in the show notes to all these videos and a lot of the stuff that we've mentioned so far, so you can watch them yourself. If you're not subscribed to Jay Siemens' YouTube channel, I was going to say outdoor channel, but yeah, a lot of stuff in the outdoors. Make sure you're subscribed and make sure you watch his videos, especially the film ones, because they're absolutely insane. Nothing like those weird movies me and Andrew make in the woods. All right. They're fishing videos anyway. But if you are someone that is, like we talked about, getting into trying to make your own YouTube videos, if you're into that, make sure you watch them. You can copy everything that he does.
Or at least attempt to.
Yeah. Just drone footage, just like me crashing into a tree. Like, yes. Anyway.
We're
going to get into our Q&A. Oh, as soon as I got the drone, I was excited. And then everyone I talked to that filmed, they're just like, it's not if you're going to crash it, it's when you're going to crash it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I got the graveyard up there. It's bad.
It is terrifying to drive expensive piece of electronics that's being held up by little thin potato chip thin propellers above water. And if it hits the water and sinks, you'll never get it back. Like, it's just like, eventually you just get to the point where you're like, well, let's see what happens.
Oh, it's wild. I can so clearly remember the feeling of flying the drone over water the first couple times. And I remember a specific experience of me flying over a waterfall. And it was back with the Phantoms, those white ones. And I had a GoPro on there, so you had to press record on the GoPro and then put the drone up. So I go and I do this crazy flight, first time flying over water, and I was sick to my stomach. And I'm just like, okay, I got the drone back and I land it, and the camera wasn't recording the whole time.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah.
That's like when me and Andrew do a podcast and forget to turn one of our mics on. It's like,
by the way, crap.
Just kidding. That's not as bad.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into the Q&A. We actually have a lot of questions. So what I did was earlier today, I put up a Q&A on our Patreon. So again, if you're not a member or even a free member, make sure you go into our Patreon. The link is in the bio below in the show notes, or if you're on our Instagram, it's in the bio there as well. And we asked a question. I said, ask Jay a question. And some of you guys, I'm a bit disappointed because some of those questions were a bit weird. So we're going to ask the good ones.
I want a couple of the weird ones. I'm curious.
I had to delete them. I thought we could just start out real quick with Mitch. He asked the question, why are you so cool, Jay?
Why are you so cool? I don't think I'm that cool. I make fun of myself daily. If you saw the bloopers, we're working on a blooper video right now. Ice fishing bloopers, and Brandon's going through the archives, and then you'll see how cool I really am.
So the way we usually do Q&A is we try to keep them to 30 seconds or less, so that way we can get to more of them. So why don't you start off with some of the first ones, Andrew?
Yeah, so some of the ones from our Patreon. Jamie asks, do you think you'll ever top that trip to Alaska?
I don't know. That'll be tough. That really set the bar. I'd like to think so, but we'll see.
Again, if you haven't watched that one, I'm going to put that again. I'm going to recommend that one again because it's such a good one. That is some place that I hope to fish too.
And quickly, does that rank above or below Pike Paradise then?
That's above.
I think it's got to be above. It was just, I almost am angry about how good it was, because now it's just, I don't want to be disappointed with other trips, but it's just like, it's like the same reason why I don't want to mount a fish. I feel like if I mount a fish and put it on my wall or like get a replica made, then I've hit that pinnacle, right, of that fish. I'm never going to catch one bigger, but I'm already thinking like I need a replica of like one of those char from that trip, because that was just bonkers.
Beautiful.
So,
yeah. That's like Andrew with his 50.5-inch muskie. Like,
once I get an extra couple grand, I'm going to get a replica made of that fish, but at $38 an inch for a replica, 50.5-incher is quite pricey.
You could buy an Alumacraft for that. I mean, what the heck? All right, here is a question from Neil on our Patreon. He says, what are your favorite GoPro positions for recording on person or in a kayak?
I love the hat cam. The hat cam, like GoPros look so dorky. I make fun of myself wearing one all the time, and it's such a YouTuber look, is just wearing this big bulky hat cam, but it saves my butt so many times on shoots, and it's always looking where you're looking, right? Like, you just have to get so lucky to get that footage otherwise, especially if you don't have a camera guy. It's like, so I like it on top of the hat. So I drill a hole through my hat, I mount it on top, and that's that one. Or on my boat, I like it on the back of the Talon or for a smaller vessel, you could figure out some sort of stick out there. Those YOLO Tech ones that go in your light post. But yeah, it's nice to have a high, wide angle of everything just as a safety net.
Have you ever played around with the 360 cams?
I just ordered one actually. I have an old one up there in my graveyard, and it only had like a 20-hour internal memory, and it wasn't good. But I just ordered one of those Insta360 X4s, they're called. So I'm thinking like for some of the portages through the woods on my snowmobile, I think it'll make some pretty cool footage doing that, that 360 globe look and stuff. So
we have the X3 we got like a year ago, and it is very cool because like for us, like again, we're
for in a small boat, it's perfect.
Oh yeah, you put that thing in the middle and it gets 360 every angle. Like any know, muskie comes in, you get the figure eight, you get the hook set, and then you can switch over different angles. It's very cool. I'm excited to see what you do with that for sure.
Thank you.
All right, Andrew, next question.
Yeah, we got one from Jason, a good buddy there. He's written in a few times. Yeah.
He actually just bought a kayak last year at CanCast.
Nice.
Yeah, a nice kayak. I'm jealous.
That's right. Give it here, Jason. So he asks, has our understanding of fish behavior and how to catch them made huge gains in the last decade relative to the previous decades? Like with the example of forward-facing sonar, more information, YouTube channels, stuff like that. So in the past decade, has there been like major advancements in fish behavior, fish knowledge, as opposed to previous years?
I would think whenever, live scope became a thing, because you learned a lot through 2D and you learned some through side imaging, but you never actually like saw that even with a flasher, it just wasn't the same way. Like I can just think of the things I've learned on how fish relate and how they speed up to a bait and slow down and how to trigger them. Yeah, it's amazing. And that's why I just love the learning tool that it is. It doesn't mean you're going to catch the fish right away if you have live scope, but it will make fishing more interesting and you will learn so much about fish behavior. So yeah, I think these last couple of years is just like, it's speed ramp. Like social media did a lot, but I think live scope now just put it into warp speed. I think any live imaging is a huge step, but I think it's gonna plateau a little bit. Like it got really good. Now it's gonna be just minor increases for the next little bit.
He did have a good follow-up question based on that then is, do you think we're changing fish behavior now as quickly as we're understanding the fish behavior? So how fast are these fish adapting to our knowledge of them and our changing of presentations?
No, I think we're catching more fish than ever. Yeah. I think we're also doing better with fish handling and catch and release too. So that probably combats it as well. Like I think there's, people aren't keeping skin mounts like they used to. Like you talk to some of these lodges in different places and like the stats are going up, the fish are getting bigger. Like that part of it is like fish can get caught a lot. I know it's not what people want to hear and people want to think that the fish they caught is the first time they caught it. But like you think of a muskie, if you think of a 50-some inch muskie, it has probably been caught and seen many lures in its lifetime, no matter where it is. Maybe the Great Lakes or some that haven't, but you go to like Lake St. Clair or something, that muskie has seen a lure before. Like
No, I was the first one. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I was talking to one of the guides I was fishing with last year, and he was saying that we were muskie fishing and he had the live scope out and he had it pointed at a muskie. And the muskie was like, and it was like 25 feet down. And the muskie, as soon as he pointed at it, the muskie was like, pew, gone. What is your opinion on that? Do you think fish can feel live scope?
I'm positive they can feel it. Like back to the topic of scuba diving. I was looking for a buddy's lost fishing rod. This was a different trip. We were 30 feet down and I could feel the ping of the 2D transducer off the back of my head. The boat didn't even have live scope. It was just 2D and I could feel it on my neck. So like, if that's what a 2D can do, I'm sure you can feel live scope. Does that mean it's going to scare fish? I don't know. It's I've seen scenarios where it seems like it does, but there's just like, I don't know. There's days where they don't care about it. Maybe there's days where they're really sensitive and they do care about it. But yeah, overall, I think there's just so many factors that will trump it before the live scope is a factor. Like I think it's the weather that day, is it's sunrise, is it's sunset, right? Maybe it is one of those things, but I think those other things are bigger factors on if the fish is going to bite or not.
You could legit do like a 4-hour podcast just on like the effects of live scope. And again, we don't have live scope, so maybe one day we'll get it. But I do, from the people that we fish with that had it, the guides especially, you can see how they use it as a tool and they're not just sitting staring at the whole day. They're literally like, here's how you can find this stuff that you'd never be able to find regularly. So there's pros and cons, but if it's used correctly, I see no problem with it at all. Here's a question from Will. I kind of know the answer to this one, but he's asking if you're coming to CanCast this year.
The answer that I told Kyle, the organizer of CanCast, was no. Baby number 2 is coming early March. So if by some chance all of a sudden everything was going very great and I felt like I could fly out for a day and fly back, I would consider it. So I wouldn't say it's completely off the table, but I would say the odds are very, very low that I'll go. But it is something that's on the to-do list, and I would like to check it out. I would say probably not this year, but I've done crazier things. This last year, I wasn't planning to go to the St. Paul ice fishing show, and then 8 hours before, I hopped in my truck and drove down to the States and went to the show and drove back through the night. And so it's just I sometimes make some spontaneous decisions like that, but yeah, we'll see.
Hopefully next year.
If you end up coming, you're more than welcome to walk around with us.
Thank you.
We'll be your bodyguards.
Perfect.
We actually had probably like 15 people ask if you were coming to CanCast. So, you know, if it doesn't happen this year, hopefully next year you can get down. And again, family is more important than a fishing show. Sorry, Kyle, but having a new baby.
I think Kyle understands. Yeah.
Yeah. He has a bunch of kids. So the next question, this is a good one. It's from Ryhoff95. He says, how do you balance making high quality content while still enjoying the outdoors?
I enjoy the outdoors, and I just enjoy the challenge of making videos. So it's always a trade-off. I don't fish without cameras that often. Now living on the lake, I definitely do a little bit more. But yeah, it is a balance because there's stress as soon as the cameras come out. Like I just put stress on myself if things go wrong. Sometimes you wreck camera gear and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's I like that I can share the outdoors through film, because not everybody can go to these places or will be able to go to Alaska, right? So if all of a sudden that lets them get a taste of it and experience some of that, and I can kind of try to share that, then I think there's some value in that side of it. But that's how I enjoy nature is by capturing it, right? Like I'm a photographer at heart as well. So taking pictures and flying my drone, those are things that I would do even if I wasn't making a fishing video. So
when you love to do something, it doesn't feel like work, right?
Yeah.
It is work. It's a lot of work to, like, again, just having the podcast. It's a lot of work for a little podcast, and imagine all the stuff that you do. It must be insane. But if you love doing it, it doesn't feel like work. So you enjoy it. So
yeah. Oh, it's my dream job. Even the toughest day is like, it's still like, hey, you're like, it's not, it's
dang
not,
it.
Yeah.
I'm out on the lake again.
Yeah. I was filming pretty much every day last week, or attempting to make something happen. And I think we went out on 4 different trips and we got one video, which is that's a pretty poor percentage. Like 25% isn't, if I did that all year, that wouldn't be good. Like I would, but that's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you go 4 trips in a row with getting videos, and sometimes the fish don't bite, you don't figure things out. We were doing some exploratory missions, and that's part of it. But I mean, that's the battle of it too, right? That's the
something
challenge.
Out of your control, right? You can't be like, oh, we're going musky fishing today, or we're going to catch one for the camera. It's like, no, you're not.
Well, I think my problem too is like, I just don't want to go back to the same lake and do the same thing again. That's why I just I want to try something new as much as possible, and I don't want to be stuck just fishing the same lake.
Definitely. And like you can tell from your channel, it's like an adventure. Like oftentimes your videos you're doing completely different things. Like, oh, 1 week we're doing this, then we're doing that.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So again, if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe, people. Come on. We don't tell you to do many things, but we're telling you to do this now. That and Patreon. Just do it. Just kidding. All right, Andrew.
There's another one from Halliburton Fishing Guide. So he's fine. Brian.
Oh, if you ever come down, Jay, if you're ever down in like Halliburton, which is just it's just north of like the Kawarthas a bit. Halliburton Fishing Guide, we fish with him. He is a hammer, but he's hilarious. Like he's dancing at the front of the boat. He names all the fish that he catches. He kisses them. He gives them belly scratches. You should, if you're ever down, like try to hook up with that guy and go fishing. It would be funny.
Oh yeah,
he sounds great on film.
He has so his question was pretty cool because it goes right down the alley of obviously you doing your YouTube. But what are some essentials you need when it comes to equipment starting a YouTube series? It gives a $5,000 budget.
$5,000 budget. I would say the first thing to make sure you have is good audio. I think everybody has a decent camera, meaning like could be an iPhone, right? I think it's unbelievable what you can do with the new iPhones. They have multiple cameras on them. They can shoot 4K. They can shoot ungraded log footage. Like that part's amazing. So it's like, even before you hop ahead and worry about the cameras, get good audio, because if you have bad audio, you can kind of fake bad video. You can't fake bad audio the same way. So I just happen to have this sitting beside, but these are Rode wireless mics. And these little beauties, I have 3 packs of them because I just use them all the time. But basically, they're mics They're called Rode Wireless Pros, and they record internally onto the mic, but they also will go into your camera. So if you have like a whatever DSLR camera, it will record onto the device and record onto the camera, which is helpful too. So I mean, like those are the core things as a camera. I shoot with an A7S III, which might be close to that $5,000 budget. So I would get an A7S III and these Rode wireless mics and a bunch of batteries, have a GoPro you could wear on your head, and then you kind of got it covered. I'm always wearing a GoPro in my hat if I don't have a camera, guys, like a safety angle. And then I'm running my big camera, maybe on a tripod or an easy cam post. It's this post that hooks onto like a seat pedestal, or whatever I need to do to rig the camera. But that's kind of the main thing, is just good audio is so important. And then after that, it's easy to get caught up in gear too. Like you could say, okay, I need a drone, I need a camera that can shoot slow-mo and all this stuff. But like, yeah, it's important to tell the story and catch the fish or whatever else your objectives are, right? But don't worry about gear too much is what I'm trying to say. It's a rabbit hole and you can spend a lot of money and,
Agreed on the microphone. So like, again, we're small potatoes, but we have wireless mics too. We have the DJI ones.
Yeah, I've heard good things about them.
Oh, they're great. Like even for us going to trade shows and doing little, clips for, interviewing businesses and local bait makers and stuff, just having that audio for those little clips that actually sounds legit in like a busy trade hall.
It's important.
It's such like night and day better than like any other thing you just film off your phone with the audio off your phone. So even that alone, it's like, it's a little bit of an investment up front, but even for like regular content creators on Instagram and stuff, just buy some wireless mics. It will literally up your game so much. Your cameras are,
you could just do iPhone 15 or 16 with these mics are, I think, around $500 for a pack, but it's like literally $500 and you could be making such good videos. Like I did a video last year. It was all filmed with my phone. And I was like, dang, why do I bring my camera gear along half the time? There's a lot of big channels out there that just do stuff with their iPhone. So it's like, just like the fish doesn't care if you got live scope or not, or if you have a big boat or a small boat. If you're doing a good job telling the story, you can do it amazingly with minimal camera gear. Yeah, you might not, if you're trying to make a cinematic film, it's a little tougher. Like the Alaska film, you need the camera gear to make something like that. But like I said, there's other videos and other clips that I've posted that are just filmed with my phone, and that can sometimes just capture the story, right? So
me and Andrew always say, like, just for the little amount of filming that we started doing last year, having a drone, even you can buy a drone now for $400, like the entry level DJI. Like you can film stuff. You're a kilometer up in the sky, not that far, but like you're super up in the sky. You get all these insane cinematic shots, and you're like, that's $400. Like a few years ago, you'd have to have a helicopter to do that. It's insane how far we've come. And literally, I know it may be expensive if you're just getting started, but if you had $1,000 to buy a drone and some mics and you have an iPhone or whatever smartphone, you're good. That's it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think it's all about, I saw some video recently and it was like, how do I become a YouTuber? And it was these Australian YouTubers. They used to have a channel called Morning Tide. They make amazing films, but they've split off and kind of do some of their own stuff. And basically his answer was like, you need to be 90% filmmaker and 10% fisherman. Because it's like, I know that there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in Canada that can catch fish better than me. But it's the filmmaking side, because, without that, I know there's lots of people that can catch fish better than me, but that's why I've spent so much time on the video side of things, because I think, that's how you tell the story. I've never claimed to be the best fisherman, but it's being able to merge those two things and focusing on it. Like that's what I learned from Aaron Weeb when we were starting things, and he would be ready to start fishing, and he'd be like, Jay, are you ready to roll? He said, I'm not going to drop down and catch his fish. You'd see a fish on his flasher, and it's probably a 16-inch crappie. And he's like, I'm not going to drop down until you're ready to go. And sometimes that fish would swim away because I wasn't ready on the camera yet, or we were still setting up. It's like, it's so important if the point is catching that fish, to make sure you catch that fish. Because sometimes I'll go out with people and I will have to tell them, I'm like, whoever I'm with, sometimes it's my wife, Sam, and I'm like, Sam, if you drop down and catch that fish before the cameras are rolling, I'm not going to be a happy camper, right? I'm like, the reason we're able to do what we do is because it's on film, right? So it's like, if I've just heard stories of some hosts over the years that like, they won't wait for the camera guys and they'll just start fishing, and you might catch the fish off film. And it's like, well, that was the fish that would have made the video. So I think that's a challenge for people starting off making videos, is like, I just want to fish. And I get it. We all want to fish. But if you want to make fishing videos, there are some sacrifices. Like a normal fishing day, I know I'm going off on a rant now, but like a normal fishing day, sunrise to sunset is very tough when it comes to camera gear and filming. Like it might be an hour of setup, an hour of takedown, that sort of thing to get things how you want them. So,
and even just with me and Andrew, for example, I'm the guy that films all the stuff, and I'm running the drone, and I got all the cameras, and Andrew's fishing, and sometimes I'm like, I love it. I love having the drone up. I like filming stuff. And I love learning how to do it better every year. But as I'm doing all that, I'm setting up the drone and calibrating it and all this stupid stuff. Andrew's literally casting, and I'm like, I always say to him, like, no, don't worry. Like, I like it. Don't worry. But sometimes I'm like, he's slamming fish, and I'm like, oh, like, I'm
fishing,
flying the drone, and he's slamming. I was like, oh, so it is kind of frustrating. It's like, you got to literally just step back and be like, what am I doing today? I'm filming. I'm not fishing. I'm filming Andrew fishing, which is terrible. But...
yeah. If only Jesse could film himself, it'd be so much better.
Yeah. If only I could clone myself to film myself. Just kidding. No one wants to see this face. But anyway, last question from iCatchDinks, who is one of our patrons as well. He says, Jay, what's your favorite place in Canada to fish, and for what species?
Oh, man.
That's a hard one.
You know, but you can't say anything. They don't know the difference. So...
I know. Lake of the Woods. Like, I mean, Lake of the Woods is just, I don't know. It's tough to beat Lake of the Woods, but just to narrow it down to one species is pretty tough. Like muskies on Lake of the Woods is one of my favorite things. But man, it's so tough to pick. I love all that sight fishing in the north. Like I have a special place in my heart for Walston Lake too. That's where I guided Walston Lake Lodge. But it's probably Lake of the Woods for muskies or walleyes. Like I just have so many good memories doing that. It's in my backyard. And it's just like you could spend a lifetime on that lake. So
before we end this episode, I would just like to mention as well that this episode was brought to you by the CanCast Fishing Show, which is Canada's biggest fishing show, which Jay might come to, but probably not next year for sure. But we actually talked to Kyle, and Kyle is giving us 2 tickets to give away this episode, as he has the last many episodes. We are giving away 2 tickets all the time. So make sure you go into our Patreon and enter. You're automatically entered again if you're a supporting Patreon member. And if not, there's going to be something annoying to do, but don't worry, you can still win those tickets. And if you haven't got your tickets yet and you don't win this, make sure you get them soon. It is the best fishing show that we've ever gone to, right, Andrew? We spend way too much money because there's so much cool stuff. The tackle swap is like, it's the kryptonite. Like you walk in, you're like, I don't need anything. You're like, ooh, $10 Suick. I'm buying 2 of those. You know, like there's so much stuff.
And then there's
Andrew
me
has
too.
a backpack.
I'm just like, yeah. My backpack weighs like 40 pounds by the time I'm done. I'm just like walking through, and people are out there. They're going to the stores like, oh, there's a great deal on rods. I'm like, awesome. I'm like, ooh, there's a 50-year-old meadow mouse. I'll take 3. Like,
I was like, Andrew, can I grab my stuff? He's like, don't put your hand in there. It's all just hooks.
Bare hooks.
What's the tackle swap?
CanCast Show is in 2 buildings, and they're side by side. And when you go into the smaller building, there's a huge section of it. I'd say like a third of that building is just like fold out tables, and guys bring in all their stuff that they're selling. It's a lot of like tournament anglers that'll, just have so much stuff.
It's just any like rows and rows of 3x6 like picnic tables,
rods,
right? Like just
reels, lures, plastic bait, musky lure, like anything you could probably, and it's cheap. Like,
and the tables are full. It's not like, oh, I let out 5 things on my table. No, they have like 5 tackle boxes, like open with like trays sitting on top, and there's stuff underneath the tables. As stuff gets sold, they bring out more.
Man, if I could fly with my gear, I would purge some stuff by doing that. I'd say bring a table, that's for sure.
You should. And you'll find great stuff, like, for instance, like a Suick.
Yeah.
Classic muscular, right? These are like down in our area, they're $45-$50. Yeah. I got this for $10 at CanCast. I actually got 3 of them.
There you go.
So you can get some cool gems. The tackle swap is one of our favorite parts. You got to run there fast in the morning, but you also have to go back right at the end when they're trying to get rid of stuff. You can get it for pretty cheap as well.
Yeah.
And there's an open-ended invitation for any time, Jay wants to come down and just set up a table of his used stuff in my living room. I'll go through it. I'll invite a couple choice friends, and we'll maybe draw one name from Patreon to come in as well. And it'll be a good time.
That's funny.
You knock on the door, you're like, how much cash do you have? They just like, $500. Okay, come in. You have enough.
Oh, that's funny.
I'd also like to mention one thing, Jay, and I don't know if you remember this, but I do. I was at sale one time when Jay was there, and I bought this flippin' stick from St. Croix. I went up to Jay and I was like, Jay, can you bless my rod? And you just like picked it up. You raised it up to the sky, and then you kissed it. And you like, bless the rod. And I have to tell you, I'm hoping this year that I'm going to catch the biggest pike of all time on this rod. Again,
which means he didn't catch it on it.
But you must have used it. You must have used it last year.
I haven't. No, I didn't. I didn't use it at all last year.
It might be cursed now.
Jay's blessings have a best before date. That's the thing.
Oh, that's too bad.
That might expire. Might get moldy.
So anyway, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast, Jay. It's kind of like a milestone for us. Again, we're just two goofs that like talking fishing. So,
well, no, this is great. I appreciate it, and it was long overdue. And we'll do it again when you run out of guests.
So anyway, we just like to mention again. So 2 CanCast tickets we're giving away, as well as that awesome Daiwa to Tula SV100, which is absolutely fantastic. So make sure you check out our Patreon. All the links are going to be below in the show notes as well. Make sure you follow Jay Siemens on YouTube, on Instagram. I'm going to put all the links below on how to follow him and do all that stuff and watch all those movies, all those clips that we talked about, the films. I'm going to link that below. So make sure you give those a watch as well. And our next episode, we're not even going to tease it because it's not as good as this one. Nothing's going to top this one for a few weeks, but I was going to be like, next week's going to be even better. But yeah, the next guest is going to have some severe issues.
There's also the handicap of I'll be the host. So.
I hope they don't listen to this.
I feel sorry for the next guest. Anyway, we end every episode with what, Andrew?
We have the quote of the week, and to handle it for us this week, it is Jay Siemens.
I have to come up with a quote.
Yeah. I was supposed to tell you that, but I forgot.
I'm joking. I saw. This is it's a quote that it works for fishing and it works for just life in general, but it's comparison is the thief of joy. And I'm not sure who said that, but I think in this day and age of social media, you can look at what your neighbor's doing and you can be jealous. I think if it wasn't for that comparison, I think people would be a lot happier with what they have because I think we're all blessed in different ways. I think it's very easy to be like, hey, and it works perfect for this episode in particular, comparing yourself to the person that has the big boat, right? When you have a kayak, but it's like, why should that rob you of your joy when you guys can catch muskies and go on all sorts of adventures in whatever boat you have? So
thanks for trying to make me feel better.
You come fishing my boat.